I love that. Pillow felt like a rock. Thank you so much, Rabbi Jacobs. I am delighted to be here, and I want to tell you about a mother who came to see me last week. And she said, I have to help my son with his homework for about 2 hours every evening. He was 13 years old. And she said, he's not much of a student, and it's unacceptable for me for him to get anything less than an A-. And she said, I really loved The Blessing of a Skinned Knee, and it was very helpful to me, and I was glad I read it. I have your new book. She said, I have it on my night table, but I can't read it because the title makes me want to throw up. I have a Chinese-American friend, and she said, they'll never publish B- in Asia, I guarantee you. So I was really excited when I got the Mandarin version, and I raced over to her and I showed it to her, and she started to laugh and she said, do you know what it says? And I said, no. And she said, it's called From a B- to an A+. They didn't ask me, they just did that. I got another call from a mother of a 14-year-old boy, and she said, Dr. Mogel, you must see my son, you must see him, I have to bring him in to see you. He's too happy. I said, does he have any problems? What are his symptoms? And she said, he has no symptoms, but I don't feel he really has an edge. I'm worried about his future. I have a friend who's a college admissions advisor at a very competitive high school, and she said that at this time of year, her phone calls to parents get returned within seconds. She sort of feels like she has a red phone at the White House. So she called one family, and the dad called her back instantly. And she said she heard a funny noise in the background of the phone call, and she asked the father what it was, and he said, it's not a problem, don't worry, I can talk to you right now, I'm just doing a colonoscopy. Creepy, right? So, these parents seem to feel that there are only two positions for their children, ahead or behind. These are parents who are afraid for their children, but I also see in my practice another group of parents, and those are the ones who seem to be afraid of their children. So I have a mom who's got a 4-year-old, and she said, she's so mean to me. She really makes me feel bad. And I thought, she's 4. What is so scary? And I'm seeing 2 dads, and one of them's a great cook. And he said to me that their 5-year-old looks at them in the morning, and this is on a school day, a weekday school day. The 5-year-old looks at the dads, and she says, that is not what I ordered. There's another trend I'm seeing, which is that children are not helping out around the house very much these days because they say the 4 magic words, I have a test. And we kind of worship at the altar of achievement. So how did we get here? Why are we treating our children like handicapped royalty and allowing them to treat us like fascist dictators? I love to speak to grandparents because the grandparents are aghast at what they see. Good-intentioned, loving, devoted parents gone bad. And part of the reason is that we have a 24-hour news cycle, and it is a hungry beast. So anything that scares parents delights the newscasters because the advertisers really love it. Did anybody see last week in the New York Times the article about pandas? This is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections. I can't make this up. This was in the New York Times. Apparently, some kids who have strep infections then develop OCD. And I just imagine the onslaught of phone calls I was going to get from parents saying, he never washed his hands before, but he's washing them now, and I'm starting to get worried. And then there is that piece of pornography called the U.S. News and World Report rankings of schools and colleges. Which gives us the impression that every single one of our highly gifted but slightly learning disabled children is not going to be able to get into one of those only 10 colleges that are the right place to go. So we get the idea that we have to start hiring the PSAT tutors in 3rd grade. And then there's another reality, which is that the world is really scary. So what I was talking about before was the fake scary, the very low probability but highly sensational events. But the world is genuinely scary. We are unsure about how to tame technology, this amazingly powerful and seductive part of our lives that in some ways seems to have taken over the economy. We don't know what's going to happen. The glaciers do appear to be melting. We don't know if there will be any planet left for our children or our grandchildren. But there's a price that we pay for all of this hypervigilance and fretfulness. By overprotecting, overindulging, and here's the little place where I can rest my notes. Let's see if that's better. No, it isn't. Okay. By overprotecting, overscheduling, and overindulging our children, we are not preparing them to launch. The college deans have secret nicknames for the children. They call them teacups and Crispies. That is the fragile and the fried. So the fragile are the ones that Rabbi Jacobs was talking about. They call and they say, I don't like this roommate. She's not kind of what I thought she was going to be like, even though I really checked her out on Facebook. And they send their papers home for parents to edit. And then the professors say that the students forget to take the track changes view off. Or they call from college from the salad bar and they say, Mom, do I like Russian dressing? Which I want them to know already, or they could take the big risk and guess. Some of them are home after the beginning of first semester before winter break because they are unable to cope without their handlers. Parents who so lovingly acted like a cross between butler, Sherpa, concierge, talent agent, ATM, and the secret police. These are good parents gone bad. So I was born to 2 Jewish parents, but I had no religious education of any kind when I was growing up. My father's job was that he published the National Lampoon magazine. So we were kind of too cool for shul. We didn't do that. And I describe myself the way Jon Stewart describes his upbringing, which is Jewish. And the Twitter version of my story, because I know I have very little time up here today, is that when my now almost 25-year-old daughter was 4, I went to Leo Beck Temple in Los Angeles to the little kids' Rosh Hashanah service, and I really went with the spirit of a cultural anthropologist. I would see how the Jews of West Los Angeles celebrate an ancient holy ritual. And not too long after that, I left my practice to study Judaism full-time. And the reason I did this is that I found in the teachings of our tradition wisdom about raising children at this moment in history that was more profound than anything I was reading anyplace else. And one of the first things I learned, thank you, was from the Babylonian Talmud. And the teaching is that every parent has an obligation to teach their child how to swim. Every parent has an obligation to teach their child how to swim. This means we are raising them to leave us. The Hebrew phrase, tsar gadul banim, the pain of raising children, means that in order for them to grow, you have to tolerate their pain without vibrating like an emotional tuning fork. An orthodontist came up to me in the book signing line in Chicago, and she said that she says to all the parents of the children in her practice, don't ask the kids if the braces hurt. Freud defined the goal of psychoanalysis as the conversion of neurotic misery into ordinary unhappiness. And what we kind of do is we interview the kids for pain, right? We pick them up at the carpool after school and we say, oh, honey, how was your day? How's your tummy feeling on a scale of, say, 1 to 4 compared to the way it was feeling this morning? And how'd your math test go? Do you think your teacher's getting your learning style any better than she was at the beginning of the year? And lunch, how did that go? Those girls who were your best friends since preschool, whose moms were my best friends, bitches. Did those girls sit with you at lunch, or did you eat lunch all alone again? And we kind of teach them to download pain as though that's the thing we are most interested in. There's a wonderful 12-step phrase, WAIT, W-A-I-T. Anybody know that acronym? It stands for Why Am I Talking? With kids, it's a really good idea to listen 4 times more than you talk. T.S. Eliot, in one of his poems, has the line, teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still. Teach them a trade. This means, so we are to teach them to swim and teach them a trade, according to the rabbis. This means that we want them to do chores from birth. In my practice, I will often talk to parents about the chores that the kids do. And I was talking to a mother the other day who said that her son had a birthday party and they had a petting zoo. And petting zoos now have things like a wolf and an alligator. It was like so exotic. And this family has a dog, 2 dogs, and they have fish, and they have a tarantula, and the kids have no responsibility for taking care of the animals at all. And I said to this mom, it's a zoo. They just get to look at the animals, but they don't have to do anything to keep them alive. I also see kids of really advanced ages who don't wipe their own bottoms. Another thing, this is another creepy sort of gastroenterology thing, which is that parents are so in charge of what's called the gastrocolic reflex, or the gut sense, which is when your body tells you that you need to go to the bathroom, that the kids don't bother going unless their parents remind them. And I see a lot of kids in my practice who are constipated for this reason. It's sort of mom's problem, it's not their problem. The 18th century great one, the Baal Shem Tov, took out his own coffee pot, cup, and spoon from the table. And one of his disciples asked him why he did this. And he said, if the high priests on the Day of Atonement took out the ashes from the Holy of Holies, I can bring my spoon into the kitchen. In Judaism, God is in the details. We are a faith and creed and tribe of ordinary service and responsibility. So here's a heads up. The common application, do people know what the common application is? Oh, if I go like this, I can actually see you. So the common application is the application that kids use to apply to college. It asks the students about their paid employment for the past 3 years, including summer jobs. This does not mean fancy community service programs in exotic countries. This means things like working at a Jewish summer camp where for sure one of the campers is guaranteed to throw up. And I really, really like this because your child is going to have to clean that up, which is a wonderful preparation for college where there's a lot of throwing up all the time. Finally, remember that each child is B'Tselem Elohim, made in God's image. When my father was in elementary school in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn in the 1930s, anybody else? Yeah? So, we'll see if this happened to anybody. They gave all the kids a singing test, and they put them in one of 3 groups, altos, sopranos, and listeners. Imagine what would happen if some school tried to pull this today. The parents would be picketing outside of schools with signs saying, solo parts discriminate, this school damages self-esteem, perfect pitch is relative, some kids can't sing. If we expect them to be good in everything, they get demoralized and dispirited. So there's a beautiful Hasidic teaching. It says, if your child has a talent to be a baker, please do not ask this child to be a doctor. We can think of them as seeds that came in a packet without a label. We can't tell what season they will bloom. We can't tell what kind of flower we're going to get, but we can just pull the biggest weeds, provide them with sufficient food and water and a good Jewish education, and stand back and wait to see who God has given us. We all need a sponsor. We all need to be in a 12-step program called Overparenting Anonymous. And Moses had a sponsor, and that was his wonderful father-in-law, Jethro, priest of Midian. And Jethro chastised Moses, and he said, "What is this thing you are doing? Settling disputes from day to night, exhausting yourself trying to help everyone. This is not the right approach. You will surely wear yourself out, and these people as well. The task is too heavy for you to do alone. Seek out those who are known to be wise and allow them to help you. Make it easier for yourself and let them share the burden with you." Jethro knew that there would be a sold-out biennial this year. "If you do this," Jethro said, "and God so commands you, you will be able to bear up, and all these people will go home unwearied." There was a wonderful New Yorker cartoon I saw not too long ago that had 2 sets of parents talking to each other, and one parent from one set was talking to a parent from the other set, and they said, "We're waiting until the kids die to get a divorce." That's a really bad example to set for children. My Rabbi Michelle Masagia of Temple Israel of Hollywood, said in her High Holiday sermon that the phrase lo ira, do not be afraid, is used more than any other phrase in the Bible, that it's used 80 times. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov said, all the world is a narrow bridge. The main thing is not to be afraid. We must put the oxygen mask on ourselves before we put it on our children. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Katz said, if you truly wish your daughter, he didn't say your daughter, but I take liberty, to study Torah, study it yourself in her presence. She will follow your example. Otherwise, she will not herself study Torah. She will simply instruct her children to do so. Your children are likely to succeed in life without perfect childhoods, without extreme protection from danger. And if you are responsible for doing important work like a colonoscopy, please concentrate on your chores. Thank you very much.